Hello everyone! Now, way back in 2020, which feels like yesterday, even though it was actually 2 years ago, during the height of the lockdown, the whole COVID lockdown thing, I did a vlog about my favourite trains. So, to counter that, I'm now going to talk about my least favourite trains. Which ones do I dislike the most? So I'm going to go through the same order I did with that video, starting with services and then go on to multiple units and locomotives. So, least favourite train service. Now, I love trains, so it's hard to pick a least favourite service, because I do enjoy train travel. And then sometimes you get a train and you're like, this is a nightmare. Way back when I was at university in the early 2000s, I quite regularly took the train from Liverpool back home to Ayrshire, which most times involved taking the train from Liverpool to Wigan North Western to change to the Virgin mainline trains. And that journey between Liverpool and Wigan, not always great. I mean, the views aren't great. I mean, it's just suburbia. There's nothing to see out the window. The trains were mostly pacers at that time. They're now Class C19, so they've probably improved since I was last on that train. But when I was travelling on them, they were mainly pacers. And on a packed suburban commuter train, they were really not up to the job. They were quite often delayed, overcrowded, there's nowhere to put your bags. Oh, we're coming back to the pacers later. But the actual service was not great. So that's going to go down as my least favourite train trip. But on to the actual rolling stock. Now, least favourite EMU. I like electric trains. They're usually quiet, comfortable, and sometimes, but least favourite EMU, I'll get to the point, it's the Class C80. Just look at this thing. I mean, it's hideous. And it also makes that weird wee 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 noise when it takes off. Inside, they're not too bad. They have sort of tables. There's plenty of space to put your luggage and that. The interior design is okay. There's a lot of grey plastic. They're not exactly plush. They're practical. They're easy to clean, I guess, but you wouldn't exactly describe them as comfortable. So yeah, the user experience was, for, let's face it, Ayr to Glasgow is a reasonably long journey. They were a step up from the Class C18s, which were basically a suburban commuter unit. So for that reason, the Class C80s on the Ayrshire coast surfaces were an improvement. But objectively, they're ugly. They're fast. They're really ugly. That sound is annoying, and yeah, the Class 350, which Transpennine Express operates, is just so much better looking. And I'm like, why have this sort of like sloping front on the 380? So yeah, 380 not a fan. 385's honourable mention or dishonourable mention, just for the hardness of the seats. They're so uncomfortable. As modern units go, they seem to just get worse and worse comfort-wise. I like 334s. They're fine trains. They're comfy. They look good. They look really good. 380s ugly. Not the best, not the worst in terms of comfort, but not the best. They're fast. They're quiet on the inside. But yeah, overall 380s not my favourite. DMUs, this is where it gets fun, because I hate DMUs. Just most of them are bad, and some of them are really bad. And the worst, I think you'll all agree, I think you know where it's coming, don't you? It's the Class 142, the Pacer, the rail bus. Ah, yeah. It's a bus on rails, which is great when you're 5. You're like, it's a bus! Of course, when I was 5, the Leyland National Bus was still operating as a bus. And you go, oh, look, that train looks just like the bus. However, these things, unlike the buses, stayed in service until just a couple of years ago. So, what, 30, nearly 4 years in service, something like that. And as a train, they are terrible. If they were kept on lightly used rural lines, maybe not so bad, but on cross-country trains, I did trips. I did a trip from Liverpool to Wakefield on one, I did a trip from Carlisle to Newcastle on one. They're just inadequate. And for heavily packed commuter trains, they're just too small. There's no leg room, there's nowhere to put your luggage, and of course the ride quality is terrible. They're just horrible units. They look nice, they're kind of cute. You know, that's their one redeeming feature, is they look like a bus. But it's almost the opposite of the Class C80 really. You know, Class C80, ugly as sin, but it's a reasonably good commuter experience. Class 142's kind of cute, but bloody awful to ride in. So, yeah, Pacers. That brings us to electric locos. Now, in the UK at least, there's not a lot to choose from here, and frankly I like all electric locos, so it was really hard to pick one that I didn't like, or at least pick one that I liked the least. And it's kind of a cheat, this one. It's the Class 73, which is an electro diesel, and these were designed to run mainly on third rail powered in the southeast of England, and to a lesser extent on Merseyside. And then GBRF ripped out the original English electric 4-cylinder engines on some of them, put in an MTU V8 engine, and put them on the Caledonian Sleeper. Why? Why would you do that? The reliability has been not good since Serco took over the service. Not blaming the Class 73s, I think a lot of that was to do with the Class 92s, to be honest, which are beautiful engines, but apparently being left in storage for some time brought up some reliability issues. But the Class 73s hauling these trains over the Highlands, and the thing is, of course, one Class 73 alone can't handle it, so what we've seen a lot of is them being double-headed with Class 66s. So you've got a Class 66 actually doing the work, and the Class 73 is basically there as an ethel. It's there to provide, you know, ETH supply. They're the wrong loco for the job. If they were down on, you know, Southern lines on the Gatwick Express running on the DC, fine, but they just make no sense on the Caledonian Sleeper. Now, that brings us to diesel locos. There's a much wider choice when it comes to which is your least favourite diesel loco, but it has to be, for me, the Class 57. So, way back in the early days of privatisation, it was Freightliner was the first customer, and they basically took a Class 47, which was a fairly nondescript, you know, diesel loco, originally fitted with the Sulzer 12LD engine, which is a twin bank 12-cylinder engine. Ripped that out and put an EMD engine in it. So now, instead of sounding quite nice. They sound, well, like a Class 66, just a yin-yang. And, oh, it gets worse. Because then Virgin decided they wanted some Class 57s for Thunderbird duties. And what they did was they took that very smart, nice, well-designed Class 47 front end, and they gutted it and put in a thing for a Delta coupler so they could couple them up to Class 290 Pendolino units. And it looks hideous. They've ruined it. They've taken a lovely, beautiful, elegant Class 47 and they've just ruined it. So Class 57, my least favourite diesel. Now, steam engines. Oh boy, there are so many steam engines that I don't like. Bully Pacific's not a fan. It's a box. You know, but the number one is the Southern Railway Q1 Class 060. I mean, just look at it. It's okay, this is my photo taken in the National Railway Museum in York. Probably hard to see because of the lighting there. I'll stick up a photo I got from Wikipedia, you might see it better. And this came out during the Second World War because the Southern Railway needed a cheap and cheerful freight loco because they were pretty much bearing the brunt of all the work in the southeast in the Second World War, bringing soldiers and guns and material and everything ready for D-Day and all that sort of thing. So yeah, they needed freight engines and they needed them quick and they needed them cheap, and this is what they came up with. And it's the most powerful 060 ever to run on British Railways, and it's square. I mean, there's no attempt at aesthetics here. It's you know, all power and no nonsense. Which, you know, fair enough. They got what they needed, but it's just so ugly. You know. Now then, at the end of the favourite trains video, I did add industrials and narrow gauge as additional steam engines. And I thought, well, I've got to do the same thing for this video, haven't I? So, my least favourite industrial, I love it. There's a lot of cute little adorable industrial tank engines out there. And then there's this thing, the Sentinel vertical boiler engines. It's again, what's under there is basically a steam wagon boiler, a vertical boiler, although I think slightly bigger in the railway engines, and a pretty much the same engine again as the steam wagons, geared up with a chain drive. So there is this steam engine. It's just, well, it doesn't look like a steam engine, does it? Yeah, they're not pretty. I know a lot of people are fans of the Sentinels, and I'm not saying they're bad engines. They're just not pretty. I mean, they kind of look almost like a diesel, and not a pretty diesel. Like it's ugly. Which brings us to narrow gauge. Now, there are so many narrow gauge engines to choose from again, but I'm going to go a little bit off piste for this one because it's a diesel. I don't have a photograph of it, so I'm just going to have to borrow one off the internet. Now, what this is a one of the new locomotives for the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad in Alaska, and these are made by National Railway Equipment Company with an EMD engine, and they sound like every other EMD engine. Yeah, and these have replaced some beautiful and great sounding Alco engines made by GE and by, I think, was it Montreal Locomotive Works in the 1960s, again with Alco prime movers, and they look good and they sound good. And this new engine, the new ones, I think the first batch are painted in the same green and yellow livery as the older GE and Montreal Locomotive Works / Alco engines, and the second batch is going to be painted black and red. And just, I don't know whether was this inspired by the steamers perhaps, and made it want to match the colour scheme of the kettles, but it doesn't look good, and from what I've seen on YouTube videos it doesn't sound good either, and I'm not a fan. Sorry, yeah, I know they're bigger, they're more powerful than the older engines, but this is a heritage railroad essentially, and for them to put new engines on there, it just doesn't do it for me. So yeah, those are my least favourite narrow gauge engines, although diesel, not steam. What's my least favourite steam narrow gauge engine? That's a tough one because I love steam narrow gauge. It might be the box that that one double fairly in particular. Oh, what's it called? Ah yes, Earl Marioneth. Out of all the Festinian Railway double fairlies, that's the least pretty. That's it. That's my least favourite trains, locomotives, multiple units. So thanks for watching. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to tell me what your least favourite trains are, please put them in the comments. I'd love to know. And thanks for watching.